I never imagined I'd become suspicious of the woman I married. For years, I trusted her without question. But lately, her behavior had changed. She was constantly on her phone, quick to hide the screen when I walked in. She'd started working late, too often. The warmth between us had faded into awkward silence. At first, I told myself I was being paranoid, that it was just stress or work. But deep down, a feeling I couldn't shake was growing louder. Something wasn't right. If you're into real, raw stories like this, hit that subscribe button and stick around. One night, I asked her if everything was okay between us. She smiled, said she was just tired and overwhelmed. Her answer sounded rehearsed. I watched her more closely after that, how she avoided eye contact, how her phone never left her hand. I didn't want to be the kind of husband who snoops, but my instincts kept whispering, "You're missing something." I started to wonder, what if she was hiding more than just stress? I tried to shake the feeling, to focus on work, friends, anything else. But every time she left the house, I watched the clock. Her excuses grew weirder. "I'm meeting a friend," she'd say, but never mentioned names. I'd offer to pick her up, and she'd quickly decline. The distance between us wasn't just emotional anymore. It was physical. She rarely touched me. No casual kisses, no late-night cuddles. The woman I knew was slipping away, replaced by someone I barely recognized. One Friday, she came home past midnight. Her makeup was smudged, her perfume unusually strong. "Dinner ran late," she said flatly, before disappearing into the shower. That was the night I decided I needed the truth, whatever it was. I didn't want to be fooled any longer. The next day, I ordered a small GPS tracker online. I felt sick doing it, but I told myself, I'm not spying. I'm protecting myself from whatever she's hiding. It arrived 2 days later. A tiny device, discreet and easy to install. I waited until Sunday when she was out running errands to slip it into the trunk of her car behind a side panel. It was undetectable, even if she cleaned the entire vehicle. I synced it to an app on my phone. From that moment on, I could see every move she made. I hated the feeling, but I needed to know. For the first few days, there was nothing out of the ordinary. Work, gym, grocery store. I started to doubt myself, thinking maybe I had let my mind run wild. Maybe I was just insecure. But Thursday came and her location pinged somewhere new, a small hotel 25 minutes away from her office. She stayed there for over 2 hours, and when she came home, she casually said she was in a meeting. That was the confirmation I'd feared. Over the next 2 weeks, the pattern repeated. Mondays and Thursdays, around 3 p.m., she'd disappear from her usual route and end up at that same hotel. Each time, she stayed for 2 to 3 hours. She'd come home acting normal, even cheerful sometimes, as if nothing had happened. I kept quiet, watching, collecting timestamps, location data, anything I could later use to confront her. Each ping felt like a dagger in my chest. I became obsessed. I'd check the app every few minutes, waiting for her location to shift. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't focus. Every movement she made became suspicious. The worst part? I still loved her. I wanted her to look me in the eye and tell me this was all some mistake. But the data didn't lie. She was seeing someone, and not just once. This was a routine, a secret life unfolding right under my nose. I knew I couldn't keep watching from the shadows. I needed to see it for myself. So the next Thursday, I called in sick from work and waited in my car near the hotel. I parked across the street with tinted windows, a thermos of coffee, and a pounding heart. Around 2:50 p.m., her car pulled into the lot. My heart dropped. I watched as she stepped out, adjusting her coat, looking around casually. A few minutes later, a man arrived. They didn't act like strangers. He kissed her on the cheek, then held her waist as they walked inside. I snapped a few photos from my dash cam. It felt surreal, like watching a movie. My stomach churned, but I stayed put for the next 2 hours, numb and cold. I didn't confront them. Not yet. I needed time. Time to figure out how to process the woman I loved walking into a hotel with another man, like it was the most normal thing in the world. I went home that night and stared at the ceiling. I didn't sleep. The images replayed over and over. her smile as she walked into the hotel, the ease in her body language. She wasn't guilty, she was comfortable with it. That hit the hardest. I could have handled a mistake, a drunken one-night stand. But this was calculated, intentional, and still, I hadn't said a word. The next morning, I decided I wouldn't scream or cry. I'd lay out the facts, ask for the truth, and see how she reacted. I transferred all the GPS logs, timestamps, and photos into a folder on my laptop. I wasn't sure what I wanted from her, an apology, an explanation, or just honesty. But I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't live in the dark any longer. It was time to open the curtain and let the truth step into the light. That evening, I asked her if we could talk after dinner. She seemed surprised but agreed, sitting across from me at the kitchen table with a plate of untouched food between us. I kept my voice calm, my tone even. "I know where you've been going," I said. Her smile faded instantly. I opened my laptop and slid it toward her. On the screen were the GPS logs, timestamps, and the photos I'd taken outside the hotel. She stared at the images in silence. Her hand trembled slightly as she scrolled. "Why would you do this?" she finally whispered. I looked her dead in the eyes. "Why would you do that?" I replied. The room fell silent again, filled with tension and the hum of the fridge. I could see the panic starting to take over her face. This was the moment I had prepared for, but it didn't feel like victory. It felt like grief. She didn't confess right away. At first, she denied everything. "He's just a friend," she said. "We were just talking." But the photos said otherwise. The kisses, the hugs, the way she leaned into him. Eventually, her voice broke. "It just happened," she muttered, eyes wet. "I didn't plan it." She told me it started a few months ago. He was someone from her gym. They connected over coffee, then drinks, then more. Her story unfolded like a soap opera. Too messy to be fiction, too tragic to be ignored. She said I had become distant, that she felt unloved, that she didn't know how to tell me. It was a blend of guilt, deflection, and emotional outbursts. Part of me wanted to scream, to throw something. But I just sat there, numb, listening to the woman I loved explain how my absence had given her room to cheat. It hurt more than I imagined. The days that followed were quiet. She tried to talk to me, but I wasn't ready. I slept on the couch. We barely spoke, and when we did, it was short, cold. She kept asking if I wanted to fix things, go to therapy, try again. But how do you fix something that's already broken in places you can't see? I kept replaying her lies, her excuses, and the way she looked at him, like he was her escape. I didn't delete the GPS app right away. Part of me still checked it, habitually. She stopped going to the hotel. Her routines were suddenly clean, almost too perfect. I guess she figured I was watching now. But I wasn't tracking her anymore. I was tracking the distance growing between us. And it wasn't shrinking. It was widening, like an ocean forming between two islands that used to be one. I didn't plan to confront the guy. But one night, I saw him leaving the gym while I sat in my car waiting to pick up a friend. He walked past me, and before I knew it, I was stepping out. "You know she's married, right?" I said. He stopped cold. At first, he didn't recognize me, then his face twisted with guilt. "Man, I didn't know she was still with you," he muttered. I could tell he was lying. I didn't hit him. I wanted to. But instead, I said, "You helped ruin something that meant everything to me." He tried to apologize, but I walked away. I didn't need closure from him. I just needed him to see my face. To remember that this wasn't some fantasy. There was a real person on the other side of their little secret. A man whose life got flipped upside down by their selfish choices. That night, I sat in the car for hours. Not crying, just thinking, processing. I realized I didn't want to fix this. I didn't want therapy or second chances. What I wanted was peace, something I hadn't felt in months. I wanted to wake up and not wonder where she was or who she was texting. I wanted freedom from the pain, the doubts, the deception. I knew then that this chapter of my life was closing. When I walked back into the house, she looked up from the couch. "Where were you?" she asked. I just said, Out. No fight. No lies. Just a quiet understanding between us that things were over, even if we hadn't said the words yet. She must have seen it in my eyes. The part of me that still loved her? It was fading, not from hate, but from exhaustion. I was tired of loving someone who didn't protect my heart. The next morning I packed a small bag. Just the essentials: clothes, my laptop, toiletries. I didn't make a big announcement or storm out dramatically. I simply said, "I need space," and walked out the door. She didn't chase after me. Maybe she understood. Maybe she was relieved. Either way, the silence that followed was louder than any argument we could have had. I drove to my brother's house and stayed there for a few days. I didn't tell him everything right away. I just said we were having issues. But one night, over a drink, it all came out. He didn't judge me, just listened. And that's when it hit me. I hadn't really talked to anyone in months. I had bottled everything up, tried to fix it alone. But infidelity doesn't just break a marriage, it isolates you. Makes you question your worth, your instincts, your memories. I finally felt like I could breathe again. Being away gave me perspective. I looked back at our marriage, and the signs had always been there. Not just the recent ones, but subtle red flags from years ago. Times she'd disappear emotionally. Times I'd feel like a roommate instead of a partner. We'd grown apart, slowly, silently. And while I didn't deserve betrayal, I realized we both stopped trying long before the affair ever began. That realization didn't ease the pain, but it brought clarity. I started journaling every morning, pouring my thoughts onto paper. It helped me stay grounded. I didn't write about her. I wrote about me, my goals, my fears, my future. I asked myself hard questions. What do I want? What am I worth? What am I willing to tolerate? The more I wrote, the more I felt like myself again. Not the husband she betrayed, not the man who tracked her car, just me. Free, flawed, healing. A week after I left, she showed up at my brother's place. He gave us space and we talked in his driveway. She was crying before she even spoke. "I made a mistake," she said. "I was lonely, confused. I don't want to lose you." It was hard to see her like that, raw, regretful. A part of me still remembered the woman I married. But I also remembered the hotel. The lies. The way she made me feel so small. She said she'd end it. Go to therapy. Do whatever it took to make it right. And for a moment, I considered it. I truly did. Because forgiving someone isn't weak. It takes strength. But I wasn't sure I had any left for her. I told her I needed more time. She nodded, but I could tell hope was slipping from her eyes. Maybe she thought this would be easier to fix. But trust doesn't come back with tears. Weeks passed. We texted occasionally, but I stayed away. The distance helped. I started running again, reconnected with old friends. I even went on a date. Nothing serious, just coffee. But it reminded me that life moves on, that I could smile again without forcing it. I still had bad days, moments where I'd hear a song or pass a familiar place and feel that sting. But healing is never linear. It's messy, but it's forward. Eventually, I met with her one last time. Not for reconciliation, but for closure. We sat in a park, the same one we used to walk in when we first started dating. I told her I forgave her, not for her sake, but for mine. I didn't want to carry that weight anymore. She cried, and I listened. Then we stood up, hugged, and went our separate ways. No fireworks, no drama. Just two people letting go. Moving forward didn't mean forgetting. It meant accepting what happened and choosing to grow from it. I changed my routines, focused on my health, and started a new job in a different part of the city. The freedom was unfamiliar, but empowering. I wasn't tied to anyone else's expectations. My story wasn't ending. It was just being rewritten. And this time, I was the author. I started telling this story not for sympathy, but for others who might be in the same dark place. Infidelity can feel like the end, but it can also be the beginning of truth, of clarity, of self-discovery. You don't need revenge or a dramatic comeback. Sometimes the real power is in walking away, with your dignity intact and your heart still beating. This pain didn't define me. It refined me, and that made all the difference.